Greetings, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to this latest narration of the web series, The Survivor Becomes a Dungeon. If you're new to the series, there is a playlist listed down below in the description. And as always, I hope that you enjoy. Chapter 37. Trisha Point of View. Alright, so she just accepted to work for Mori. But now what? She still needed tools immediately, and looking around, she wasn't sure where she would have to forge or anything like that. She cleared her throat before speaking up a little cautiously. But Mori, where do we begin? She asked as she flashed a sheepish smile. It takes a few moments, but she can feel a voice in the call speak up. Well, you need tools. I can try and whip up some cast iron tools for the short term. I won't be an efficient use of my resources, but until you have a forge, I suppose things like that will have to do. Go on, take those axes for now, and I'll put together some tools to get your people started, I explained, and somehow she could feel his attention already shifting away. Trisha glanced over to the core and the axes before collecting one in each hand, bringing up an axe and resting it on her shoulder. I'm not sure what you mean by casting, but I have a feeling that what you're talking about is more along the lines of molding. She looked somewhat serious before smirking a bit. But who am I to question the phrasing of my new patron? See you soon, boss, she mused before making her way out of the chamber, glancing back once more before starting her descent. She is a little disappointed that the little red decided to stay behind, but she does have work to do and needs to focus. But Mori, point of view. All right, so we're going to try casting this time. Honestly, why didn't I think of this sooner? Just shaping the metal freely in my storage space isn't stable enough, and I could save so much energy by heating the metal to the melting point instead of trying to shape everything and compressing it to try and retain its shape. I didn't consider it earlier, since the need wasn't so immediate. With all the materials I have now, I could also probably start experimenting with steel production, not to mention trying to produce a suitable quenching liquid for our future forge master. Though before I could really let the ball get going on my plans and ideas, I sensed two different sets of eyes burning holes in my core as I focused back on the here and now. The first thing I see is a red-furred cub sitting at the base of my steps, his fluffy head brimming with new experiences and ideas. The other set of eyes is Dread. At some point, he approaches the entrance to my chamber and is currently kneeling, waiting for my attention. I look between them curiously before addressing the cub. Give me a moment, little buddy. Let me speak to Dread, and then you'll have my full attention. The red cup's ears drop a little, but he morales a confirmation as he walks forward and lounges on the first step while looking at Dread as he waits. Rise, Dread. What's on your mind? With that, Dread rose to his feet and approached, a small smile on his face as he pressed a fist to his chest in salute, lowering his head respectfully, before standing tall. Creator of R.E, as per your wisdom, we 8 knights have trained ourselves with each other. We've all ignited our mana hearts, and we are desperate to test our mettle against the threat below your territory, he explained, though his eyes were glinted in enthusiasm despite his calm expression. That was surprising to hear for sure. Wait, every last one of you, so soon? I was under the impression that it took a considerable amount of mana for something like that. Dread merely shrugged as he got down to his knees in a relatively relaxed kneeling position. Sloth and Envy have considered that it is most likely due to your influence, Creator. My influence? But I haven't given you more mana outside of when I initially created you all, I countered, not exactly sure what he was getting at. Dread tilted his head from side to side as he mulled over his thoughts for a moment, before speaking up. Again, these are the suggestions of Envy and Sloth, but by merely being within your territory, your bubble, as you put it yourself, through meditation practice that seems to have been ingrained into these bodies you have placed us in, we are able to absorb the mana in the air. The concentration of said mana must be rather weak where they did this practice, because it was rather effective at absorbing every speck of mana around us, he explained dutifully, not entirely understanding things himself. I see. Thanks for letting me know. I'll have to consider the implications later. Anyways, what do you want of me? I can't help but ask, my overall curiosity significantly sated for the time being. At that, Dread flashed a confident grin as he stood at attention. "Ah, yes, Creator W.R.E, the 7 sinners and I wish to delve into the caves below your mountain, and work on further cleansing the rot and pestilence that dare abide there," he explained with a righteous vigor. I couldn't help but feel at least a little skeptical. Only fools rush headlong into battle for anything beyond the defense of themselves or the others in your care. But then again, Dread isn't an overly cautious survivalist in a dead world. His type would probably be common in a world like this, with all the heavy old-fashioned weaponry and magic. "Very well, you have my permission. However, you must bring along Frisbee, and I imagine she would be much more knowledgeable about that place than any of us." Dread looked rather thoughtful for a moment before lowering his head. "As you will, Creator W.R.E, we shall bring you glory." With that, he stands and turns to leave, ducking past the entryway and into the sunlight. With Dread off, I turn to check on the red cub, who's been patiently waiting for me. "All right, little buddy, you've got lots to share now, don't you? Go on, think about what you've experienced." The little firebolt, in turn, morales pleasantly, and he gets all fidgety with excitement, before closing his eyes and thinking nice and hard. Frisbee, point of view. She didn't expect to be back here so soon. They were standing before the entrance of her old home and living tomb. She shudders, but scampers forward on all fours, and she glances back at the warriors behind her as they look around curiously. Their heavy feet echo in her body with every step as they delve deeper and further into the underground cavern. Even as they pass through the second cavern, the threshold that used to be there could no longer be sensed as they kept walking and descending. As they moved on, it was Sloth that spoke up first. "The air here, stale, dead, empty," she said slowly in a relaxed tone. Envy followed up, their faintly glowing green eyes scanning the walls before looking at Sloth and nodding. "You're right, Sloth. Whatever manner of being that once claimed this place as their own has drained every speck of mana in this place. The Creator is going to have their work cut out restoring this place." There are murmurs and grunts of agreement as they pass ancient and ruined traps and chambers, though Frisbee came to a stop, her front paw outstretched before she brought back to her chest and sat on her back hind legs. Dread came over, looking at the rat curiously before getting down on one knee to be closer to her level. "Frisbee, what's the matter? Is something wrong?" Her nose couldn't help but twitch as she anxiously wrung her tail between her hands. "Sorry, it's just, this chamber was my home for centuries. My children, my brood, starved for so long here. The only thing that kept them alive was my mana reserve," she squeaked, a shuddering breath, as she looked back up at Dread and the sinners, who were listening intently. "Of course, I am grateful to Aruru and W.R.E for freeing me from this hell of starvation, but I still can't help but feel for my children who never got to develop minds of their own. I suppose I shall always be a wretched brood mother." She shakes herself, smacking her face slightly with her front paws as she sighs. "Come, you can't stay forever." At that, Wrath speaks up as he reaches out and pats her back. "Take your time, Frisbee. We're following you," she says in a gentle, rumbling voice before footing back. She smiled a little but shook her head again. No, I shouldn't. I can always come back later once it's safe," she reasoned, but mostly she was trying to convince herself as she reached out her front paw and entered the chamber, scurrying a little faster than before to try and get out of here sooner. "So, Frisbee, we probably should have asked sooner, but what are we supposed to expect down here?" Envy asked, following the rat's quick pace towards the end of this particular chamber. Dread holds up a fist suddenly, signaling for everyone to stop as he narrows his gaze. "Hold on, I'm feeling something in front of us," he says quietly as he glances back at the others. Envy responds as he approaches, his glowing gaze studying the air. "It's another bubble, but not of the Creators. As far as we know from Basti and Aruru, the moment we cross here, we'll not be able to reach the Creator, and we will be alone." He then looks over at Frisbee and quirks a brow. "So again, what can we expect down here?" Frisbee was silent, staring intently at the wall that she was wrung her tail and a pause before swallowing audibly and speaking up for another moment. "I don't actually know. I hoped I'd remember as we went along, but it's been forever since I went deeper than my own chamber." There was a collective sigh from greed, envy, lust, and gluttony. However, Dread spoke up at that. No worries, Frisbee. We were planning on going blind anyways, so our goals haven't changed. He reminded the others before resting his hand on his blade grip and stepping forward. The next moments were uncomfortable, to say the least. It was like one of their senses was missing, and the world just felt less than it was before. It was like something around the back of their heads was just absent. Though they descended deeper, the path before them widened in a spiral before they finally came to another massive chamber. To the left of the chamber, there looked to be a natural spring that burbled audibly, yet softly, in what would otherwise be a totally lifeless room. The rest of the room was unnaturally smooth, the walls and floor looking properly carved as if to offer a semblance of civilization. Though, with all of that, moss and fungus seemed to overtake the entire chamber, save for the area directly around the spring. Envy spoke up as he looked around curiously, stepping in further than the rest of the others. Strange. We've seen signs of traps and other threats along the way, but why did the being choose to start making things look unnatural now? Frisbee scampered further into the chamber, her ears twitching thoughtfully as she looked around. There's supposed to be something in here. But where? Perhaps in the water. Dread wondered as he approached the natural spring, looking over the water's surface before grabbing a particularly chunky mushroom and tossing it into the water. The mushroom stayed on the surface. It didn't sink, and it's not just floating. All of a sudden, the water began to move while the mushroom started to melt into the surface of the thing. Everyone, get away from the water! End of chapter. I'd quickly like to thank the T5 channel members and patrons: Cam Maxwell, Casper Arnholtz, Bushmaster177, Lord Azrekahl, AmbroseKTal, Quantem Wensday, Dragzoon W.R.E, and Blueberry Cat. Thank you very much for the support. It is super appreciated.